It's these two guys. These two guys. It's these two guys.
Hello, everybody. This is Larry Richardson.
And I'm George Henry.
And we are
these two guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. We have got an interesting topic, something that's been coming up a lot on my feed. There's been a lot in the podcast world about dimethyltryptamine and the idea of alternate realities. And so we're going to kind of delve into that with some information that we've seen on podcasts, on the Sean Ryan Show, Joe Rogan, a couple other places like that, talking a little bit about that.
And again, we're just, two guys that are kind of curious as to these extraordinary claims. And this is not to say that we approve or disapprove or agree or disagree, but we just thought that we'd touch on it.
So here's a little quick clip on what DMT is.
DMT is the active ingredient in ayahuasca that is used by certain Native American tribes as like part of their religious ceremonies and as part of like spiritual journeys and things like that. Astral travel, like otherworldly beings, like states of consciousness.
So many of you might have heard of ayahuasca. That is something that the Native Americans use. And in fact, I believe it's legal for them to use in their ceremonies, but generally all 50 states, it is not legal, although in the state of Oregon, psilocybin is legal as far as, magic mushrooms, they're called.
Or what they call peyote, you might have heard of it.
But then again, that's not necessarily what this is about. They're specifically talking about DMT as far as that goes. And, there's people out there that have put on YouTube different experiences they have. Here's one guy talking about a trip that he took.
The first time I did DMT, I was 19 years old. I was a stone cold atheist my whole life until this point. What happened was I blasted out of my body. I looked back down. I could see the earth. I was in space. I could see the spherical earth with a electric current that started to orbit around like the equator. And then I zoomed in, I became that current, and it was like a stream of consciousness. As the electrical current circled the globe, my vision and my awareness was hopping from different bodies. So I was like a rice farmer in China. Then I was like an Indian woman holding a baby. Then I was like a Middle Eastern man. And I'm seeing all these different parts of the world as I'm bouncing around until I circle back, and then I'm back in my body.
Now, I found that personally kind of funny. I don't know if you agree with me, but I always wonder when people explain these trips that they go on. And this guy Woody, he went on a trip.
Yeah,
he had bags packed and he was out and about. But I always wonder if that's something that he fed his own subconscious, maybe in his trip.
Well, and that's one of the things about this too. And we were talking before we came on here that when a few years back I did a past life regression, and I'm sitting there on this marble slab in Greece, BC, with this silk kind of screen around me, and there was a woman tending to my needs, and I was old and I was dying and I was Aristotle, and I'm like, did my mind create all this? Yeah. Sure, yeah, you're opening up something in the brain, but are you really opening up a past life regression, or are you opening up, because I'm sure you've had a dream before, right?
Oh, yeah.
That had no relevance in reality, and you're like, well, how did I come up with that? Right. Where did that image in my dream come up with? So, that's why I want to be skeptical, but I want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
You got to give the benefit of the doubt. I know there's a lot of, there's even books in the dream interpretations, right? Where maybe you don't know exactly what you dreamed about, but you can read this book and I kind of go off the rails here a little bit when it comes to like psychics. And again, this is not to downplay any psychics, and I know this is not completely on the subject, but sometimes they'll tell you certain things like, oh, you're looking for something. Well, everybody's looking for something. So boom, you got that first hook, right? And
well, that's the interesting thing about a past life regression. A past life regressionist is not allowed to lead you anywhere. They can't say, are you looking for something? They can't say, is there something that you see? They're in their integrity of doing this, they have to be very careful not to
lead
coerce you,
right,
or not to give you a suggestion that would bring up something.
Because that's easy. That's an easy
Yeah.
way to pull yourself into something and
Right.
have those.
That's the way some psychics that aren't necessarily real. I don't know if they're real or not. I don't know if psychics are real, but I know there's some people that believe they are. So we'll give you that.
Yeah.
But that's the way they do it sometimes. You know, they get you to say what they want you to say.
right. Or just to believe in something to get you to the idea that they are legit. And I know there are legit ones and there are probably non-legit ones. So we're just not saying that all psychics are not legit.
Right.
So don't get us wrong there.
Now, psychedelics, for their purpose, have many purposes, and you know, through the last couple of decades, they've learned the benefit to like folks with PTSD, mental health issues, severe depression, and stuff like that. David Kovalik is a guy who is he calls himself a scientist, but that's not necessarily the case. But he has a little TED talk that he does, and here's what he has to say about the use of psychedelics and mental health.
So today, the substances that freed the minds of an entire generation in the 1960s are now helping to free the minds of individuals with crippling mental health conditions. But as you might guess, psychedelics can also free the mind of healthy individuals too. And the psychedelic renaissance is revealing to us that these substances are extraordinary tools for scientists like me to study the mind and understand the mechanisms of consciousness itself.
And just a little background on David Kovalik, how we pronounce him. Yeah, basically he's a creative professional collaboration and consciousness projects, sorry, I should say. And his background is mostly in multimedia communications rather than academic,
Right.
you know,
And-
neuroscience.
Right, and here he is talking about consciousness right here. So let's let him tell you about that.
Because collectively, science lacks an explanation for how the molecules, cells, and organs of our body synergistically combine to generate this all-encompassing experience that we call consciousness.
So one of the things we were talking about consciousness, and we came upon the one gentleman, Chase Hughes. I think he was talking about the idea that there are some that believe that consciousness is not in of ourselves. It comes from external, and that the brain is a filter for that. And I think we have a clip on that. Let's check this out.
Federico Fagin talks about this, and Rupert Sheldrake, that consciousness is something that comes from outside of our head, and our brain acts like a filter for consciousness. So that when we do things like psychedelic, is really muting and turning down that filter.
So when I look at that clip, and I'm taking it back from my experiences. If anybody's familiar with the game Sims, that's kind of what I believe this is what they're talking about. Anybody play Sims, you know this. You have a character. Basically, you bring this. You control every aspect of this character's life. And there's a little diamond over their head that kind of floats around and whatnot. So try to imagine that when you're thinking about what they're talking about. This person you're taking care of is a human being. But you're the one that's controlling them from a different level of consciousness or reality, right? So that's what I equate.
Well, you know, we were talking earlier before, and you know, you say, well, you know, did the idea come first, and then we created the world around the idea, or was the world there, and gave us the idea for that? In other words, okay, you got the Sims game there where you're controlling that. Was that game a result of because somebody's in somebody's reality, you know, knew about this and then made the game for it?
That's food for thought. Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's sort of like when you watch science fiction of 50 years ago, and you see a dozen things in that science fiction that we now use.
Star Trek, for example.
Star Trek is a good one.
Communicators.
Yeah.
How often has, I mean, even to this day, teleportation is one of the sciences that they continuously try to create. And they were able to teleport, was it like an apple or something like that at some point in time? It probably became applesauce on their side, but apparently, from what I understand, there was a science where they were able to teleport either a non-living item or something like that from one location to another.
Well, that's like Galaxy Quest and the pig lizard.
Yeah.
It's inside out,
It's
and
inside-
it exploded.
And it exploded, yes.
But you think about that. You think about teleportation. Back in the, was it the 40s or maybe even the 30s? I can't remember. Someone out there could comment if they want to look it up. But Vincent Price did the movie The Fly.
Yes.
And he was, of course, it was redone later with Jeff Goldblum, but he does where he's got this clean environment and he's going to transport himself from one machine he's got there to the other. And a fly gets in the machine, and next thing you know, he's got a fly head, and then the fly
Becomes a human, yeah.
has human, and the fly escapes, so he can't switch it back. He could have switched it back, and then at the end you see the two guys sitting on the bench, and they hear help me, help me, and the guy kills the fly, and I'm like, so I mean, so it's not like all of a sudden these ideas came to being.
No.
Like you said, the telecommunicator, the different ways, propulsion ideas that have changed, the drones, so someone thought this stuff up, and whether it was from a point of consciousness,
right? Was it a dream, or did they actually experience this from maybe like external source?
Yeah. Some people believe that aliens are giving us this information too. So that's another thing. One of the people that, and for the reason I'll even show this clip is that he is probably, I don't know if I want to say this. I do want to say it because I think I believe it. He is probably the most influential podcaster out there today, and that's Joe Rogan.
I believe so. He's a household name.
He is. I mean, everybody knows this. If you don't know this guy, you're living under a rock.
Right.
But that's probably just a fake rock, and it's just in your imagination. But anyway, so Joe Rogan was talking about that. Now this cut is from 6 years ago, so this isn't a recent cut here.
Oh wow, yeah.
So this is from 6
he
years
looks
ago.
a little cleaner than he does now in that cut. I noticed that.
Looks a little younger. Well, actually, he says he's doing more healthy eating now than he was back then, probably.
Well,
So
he must be
cleaner.
growing hair from every orifice of his skin.
Could be that.
He
that
looks
too.
much hair. That's no diss on
No,
him,
no,
Joe.
we're just kidding, Joe. Please don't hate us for that. Yeah. So this is whether consciousness goes beyond our reasonable belief of what consciousness is. Here's Joe.
What's also possible is that life itself, that whatever the life is, and especially whatever the intelligent life is not understood. What consciousness is not understood. And this idea that things can only exist in this realm, that's not proven.
So you've got movies out there that have the alternate realities, the alternate consciousness, the multiverses, things like that. Why don't you go ahead and we were out talking to our wives out there. You were talking about the Matrix story and the origin of that. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and talk about that story? Because some people might not realize some people might think that the Matrix was just a bunch of people, that were in these tubes and they were cut off. But it goes back farther as with the humans trying to save themselves.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So if you guys don't know, if you watch The Matrix and you really paid attention to it, you know the storyline, right? Humans put all their faith in AI. AI turns against the humans. A war incites. And then the humans, in order to get rid of the AI that they've created themselves, basically have to black out the sky, right? Because the AI and their machines are basically getting their juice from solar. Because at some point, the humans thought cutting the juice off to the machines would basically make them die. But again, it's AI. It's smart, right? It's sentient. So it knows that we can get juice from the sun. You black out the sky. And that they're within the AI and the machines basically started realizing that they can pull the electricity, because we do generate juice from our bodies in order to keep them afloat. And therein lies, in order to keep that juice coming, have the humans produce this energy, we had to continue life subconsciously in our conscious as we knew it, right? So that's the Matrix in itself. It's a computer generated realm where humans can live there, and you live your life out. You can be famous, you can be poor, you can be anything, you can be happy, you can be sad, rich, a politician, just like we're living right now, if this is real. As long as you produce that energy, the machines will stay alive. And so basically we become batteries.
For the machines.
Right.
And so, that's sort of the idea when we talk about the alternate reality there, and the idea that, there might be things that we see or don't see that are there, but they're out of our purview. They're out of our field of vision. And that goes into this guy, Chase Hughes, who was also on the Sean Ryan show. And he was talking about DMT and how it effectively, works within the body. And he was watching there's a video of some folks that were on this, and here he is talking about it here.
I see this video and I'm watching the behavior of the people observing everything to see if they're lying. 'Cause I'm a behavioral expert. I'm looking for deception and lies and all this stuff all the time. They were all truthful.
To give you a little background on Chase Hughes, now he is a little bit more credited, right?
Well, he's definitely got the behavioral aspect of
Right.
of his military training in there and what he learned from that. So he can definitely, I think, tell whether someone's telling the truth or not.
Right. Yeah.
For
I mean,
sure.
he's got studies on, deception and persuasion and things like that, probably, and, interrogation tactics or something. I don't know, but he's got some credentials.
But here's the idea, though. Okay, if somebody believes something is the truth, right, and they repeat it, it's going to come across as truth
Yes.
in their eyes and in their being. Even in a lie detector test, if someone believes false information is true, it's going to show up as they are giving a true answer.
Right.
So, whether he can sense deception or not in them, I mean, if someone believes it enough, I mean, if I was on this trip and I was tripping and this is what I saw and I believe it, it's going to show as real. For
Yeah,
that
it's
person.
like what's his name, Travis, the guy from the guy that got taken up in the by the aliens. Not Travis Walker. Can't remember this guy's name. There was a movie made after him. D.B. Sweeney was the main character or whatever, but he got pulled up into the spaceship and through all the interrogations and everything they said, all the questions they asked him and everything, it was real. Probably because, like you said, if you believe it, and it's in your mind. If the lie detector is going to try to separate what you believe and what you don't believe, or what's true and false, if it's true in your mind, it's true to you.
Then Chase Hughes also talks about the idea of code being revealed. And here he talks about the DMT and lasers and how you can see things in those lasers. So here he's talking about that.
So if you bought like a DeWalt laser level at Home Depot and it paints that line across the wall, and then you put something in front of the laser to kind of diffuse it. So you take it from being a really thin laser line and then spread that sucker out so it's like 6 inches wide, big fat line of laser on the wall. And then you get somebody that's on DMT or psychedelics, almost any psychedelic, I think. When you look at that, you can see, number one, you can see through the wall.
You can see through the wall.
You can see through the wall.
Where the laser is, or just through the wall?
Right where the laser is, you can see through the wall. You can even put it on your arm, and the code changes on your arm.
He talks about how, you see the code and, it's very specific code. And if you, like you said, you move the laser, you see different code. So what is that code that he's seeing? Here he is explaining what he believes that code is.
While you are in the DMT state, you get close to the wall and you can see code that looks kind of like alien writing, like you'd see, and then some that look like kanji, Japanese characters. But the thing is, when you're hallucinating something, like sometimes hallucinations change and warp and modify a little bit. This is permanent, solid.
So yeah, I found that very interesting because one, I have a tattoo that has kanji on it, and if you've seen The Matrix, you'll know that some of the characters that are falling down the screen, the green characters as you're looking at, is the code as they say in the movie. And if you saw it, you know that there's a scene where Cypher, one of the characters from the movie, is explaining the Matrix to, I want to say it was Neo, right? Keanu Reeves' character. And he's saying, as you look at it, you see, the green codes or whatever. He says he's been looking at it for so long. When he sees it, he sees a blonde brunette, So I can see that. And that was part of the thing that I thought when we talked about earlier is are we seeing codes because that was planted in our heads from, the movie, or for those who may have seen the movie. But
Was Cypher the Joe Pantaleone character?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's cool. Yeah, now I remember. Because what was the other main character's name?
Morpheus?
Morpheus.
Morpheus.
Yeah. Okay, I'm getting that straight there. All right.
So yeah, the coding was definitely very interesting, and I get it is because like what he's saying, as it points to the wall when you move it. If you're writing code from the top left-hand corner and you finish that code in the bottom right-hand corner, then that code is taking up the entire page. So as that laser moves, you're just moving up and down the page, not basically rewriting the code. You're exposing different lines of code.
Yeah. So for reference, I mean, if you're looking at a blank wall, you know, that's kind of vague when you start thinking about how there could be different code. But just think about a picture, you know, so if you're looking at a picture, there's certain images in that picture there. If you're just looking at the bottom part of it, you move it up, you're looking at different parts of that same image. So there is different characters within that wall that bring the different code out.
Right.
But he's, you know, as you heard him say, but as they're looking at the one, you know, you can move either way. You can move back and forth. The code stays the same.
The code stays the same.
It's when the laser moves that the code changes.
Yeah.
So Danny Goler is who Chase Hughes is talking about with Sean Ryan here, and he gets Sean Ryan to commit to getting Danny on the show. And so Danny gets on the show, and he kind of goes into a little bit about what his idea or how he discovered all this. And he is the founder of the Code of Reality, purposes that share DMT experiences may point to an underlying structure of reality, though those claims are unvalidated by mainstream science. So, and he's aware of that. He makes no bones about it you know, that this is early study.
Early study, early science, and it's fringe science at this point, right? When we're discussing it, we don't really have any solid evidence of, you know.
And here he is talking about, you know, multiple people, you know, seeing the same things and how they can determine what's the same.
Can we find that boundary? Because my intuition was that even though a lot of people report similar things on DMT, you know, very often people report the same beings or something like this. But how do you really know it's the same? My question was, can we in real time reliably see the same thing, like at the same time?
And also to go along with that is the idea of, you know, he mentions boundary in there, but, you know, where do these boundaries go?
For some reason, I had this very strong intuition that told me that there has to be a boundary, because we sometimes see it, sometimes we don't see it, right? So that fact alone, this binary, tells me that we penetrate some kind of a boundary somewhere.
And here's kind of in the same vein of this is Chase Hughes basically also explaining the laser experiment.
We wound up flying to a place where DMT is not illegal. And we shine this thing on the wall, and I've never done DMT before until this day. If you move your head, the code stays in the same place. And if you move the laser on the wall, like you take the laser level and scoot it up, different code reveals itself as the laser is moving.
And then when Danny Goler's back on the Sean Ryan show, he's talking about how, okay, so we understand 2 + 2 is 4, right? 4 + 4 is 8. That's our mathematics. Then you have the laws of physics, all right? You know, you got gravity, something drops out of the sky, hits the ground. There's a bunch of other laws of physics, and I am not a physicist, so I can't even get into that.
We'll have to do an episode on Newton.
Yeah, but here he is talking about the idea of maybe our physics versus some other physics.
What else do we know? We know that if the space is real, like existing on its own side, that means it must have a geometry, it must have a topology, it must have rules, its own laws of physics, even if they're not our laws of physics.
Yeah, so if someone, all right, so going back also to the idea of, okay, everyone's staring at the wall, they see the same thing, they see the same images. How do you know?
How do you know exactly?
How do you know they're the same images? Because, you know, like when I read an author and an author describes a room, you know, I read another author, an author describes the same room a little differently.
Right.
So how do you know they're viewing the same thing? How do you know they're viewing the same images? Because you can't take a picture of what their mind is reading.
Exactly.
So, you know, again, this is another one of those things that's subjective, you know, and how do you know? How can you tell?
Yeah, we kind of threw the term around folie à deux, right? Because,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of a shared psychosis. It's just people say something, you may feel that you're seeing, oh yeah, hey, I saw exactly the same thing you just said, because they gave you something to help fill in the blanks. They gave you something to help put a name or a vision to what you think or what you may have saw, but what you claim to see.
Well, here's a more real life sort of take on that. you have what's the color of your car again?
Cyber metallic orange.
Cyber metallic orange. Now, I don't ever remember seeing cyber metallic orange until I saw your car, the car you had before you trade this in. And the next thing you know, I'm seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's like your vision becomes open to seeing those other things. Like, well, there might have been one or two in town. No, there's 7 or 8 because there's a Mach-E Mustang like that there. There's another Mustang convertible like that. There's
another Bronco like it.
There's a Bronco like that. There's a Ford truck like that.
Yep.
You know, and I never saw those before. So is that a folie à deux?
I mean, it basically brings awareness to something that you saw that now it's in your brain. It's way more noticeable.
Yeah.
You probably would have saw it before and thought it was yellow, or you would have thought it was just a regular orange. Now you're seeing it, and you're seeing it. You know what it is. Now when you see it, you see what you've been educated to know, right? It's a cyber metallic orange. It's an orangish yellow with flake, and it's not just a solid orange color.
But that was even the same like with my Ford F-150. I've got a red Ford F-150. Now I see red Ford F-150s all over the place where I just never really noticed them before.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure most of you guys have experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
Comment if you have, or if you haven't, just share your stories with us. We're interested in that as well. But you know how it is, right? Like you see a Volkswagen, or you buy a Volkswagen, or a relative buys a Volkswagen, or a friend, and you see that, and now every time one gets close to you, there's a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
There's a Volkswagen. You know, your mind is just, your subconscious, your mind is just pulling you into this every single time.
Well, you know, even as when my kids were younger, my son and I would drive somewhere and we'd have the pinch bug.
The pinch bug game.
You know,
yeah.
and then we had, I don't know if you ever played the roadway game before.
No.
But whenever you see a roadway truck with a trailer on it, you got to punch the other person in the arm.
It's like
right?
slug bug. Yeah.
Yeah, slug bug. But so, and then if a road, like when you're driving down the road, there can be a roadway that has 3 trailers on the back of it. So you get 3 punches.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So, you know, so it's like that. So you all of a sudden you see, you know, you don't never notice roadway trucks on the road before. And then all of a sudden you're seeing roadway trucks all over the place and your arm is sore by the time you're done with your 30-minute trip down the road.
But yeah, things being brought into your subconscious will more likely remain in your subconscious, is what we're saying. And, you know, if you say you experienced a code, but you can't put to words what that code is, we can't take a photo of what's in your eyes, and then someone says, hey, it looks like Japanese characters and it looks like hieroglyphs, and you go, yeah, it kind of does look like that. Now that's what you see. You know, that's what becomes the real, that becomes your reality sometimes. And I think that's kind of what we were talking about.
But then again, you know, there has to be a point where you can sit there and describe somebody so that they can relate to what you're talking about.
That is true too.
So, you know, it's like, well, you know, it's sort of like a Japanese letter. Oh yeah, now I see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before you didn't, like, maybe someone didn't know what Japanese lettering looked like.
Correct. I agree,
You know?
100%.
So this is, like I said, we are, what's the term? We are DMT, alternate reality curious.
Yes.
Curious.
Yeah.
We're not experts in it. We don't know the answers to these things, and we're not trying to solve any questions here or answer any question about that. But we're just trying to open it up so that, you know, maybe that if you weren't familiar with this before, now you become familiar with it. You go and do a little bit of your own, you know, research on this.
And I think people doing the research will help fuel the science too. I mean, you guys may not have, you know, experienced any of it, or you have experienced it, but you're curious and you have your questions and you go on your forums and you post it. The scientists can actually have more things to go off of, more avenues to venture down, I think.
One of the things people describe seeing is they have different vibrations and different things are happening around them when they're on psychedelics like DMT. And here's Joe Rogan talking about one of his experiences. Again, this is from 6 years ago.
I saw one hovering here, and then in every direction out from him, there was an infinite number of those, and they were all hovering and vibrating around me.
So now when you talk about the DMT experience and you talk about the psychedelic reaction you get from it. Now, here's my understanding of how this works. There's several different ways that you can receive DMT into your body. You can do it as a smoke or a vapor. You can do it as a brew, or you can do it as a pill. Now, the inhaling of it is about a 5 to 20 minute trip. All right. The pill and the brew can last for hours because it sort of acts like a time release. As your body gets the stuff in your stomach, then it works through your digestive system. So as you're digesting, it's constantly putting it back into your body.
System, yeah.
And so it's one of those things that's like, well, if you want to experience this, you have to decide, how you want to experience it.
And for how long.
And for how long, yeah.
And if you're going to experience it based on this podcast, we would recommend you do it with a close person who you can actually trust to be in the room with you.
Yeah.
Please.
Or there are places, there are countries you can go to that do this in a safe environment, like the ayahuasca and stuff like that.
In other words, DMT responsibly.
Yes. In fact, here's an interesting thing about this, and sometimes people don't want you to know, but I had a acquaintance of mine that I knew in North Carolina, and I DM'd him one time and said, hey, I remember when you were talking about your ayahuasca experience, and can you share a little bit of that with me? And he goes, well, I never took ayahuasca. And I was like, yeah, you told me you went down to Colombia, which is where he was from. No, I never took ayahuasca. And I'm like, okay, dude, I know, unless it was an alternate reality that I created in my head, I know you went down there, and I know you told me that story on that. So it's sort of like, well, now I don't want to tell.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to know.
Right. Well, I'm sitting there thinking, my employer is probably looking at right now. It's like, do our drug testing detects DMT?
Well, you're not. You haven't taken it.
No, I have not.
No, that doesn't mean. And again, my son, I wouldn't say he's bipolar, but he definitely has some mood swings up and down. And he really wants to do this. He really wants to do it. And he would love for me to do it with him. And I want to try to find a way to do this because I'm not opposed to doing it.
Yeah, no.
I don't have, unless it affects your heart in a way that's not good. Maybe I don't, but I would like to do that. And I would think, if you're interested in doing this, I would think you'd want to take the short trip first.
Right. Yeah.
The 5 to 20 minute trip. Because because people say they do trip bad sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not all good. It's not all, lights and whistles and all that stuff. Sometimes it could be pretty dark on that too.
I explain this. This was many, many years ago. My first time ever trying gummies, and kind of we talked about this earlier in the podcast. I mean, early outside.
Yeah, we talked about it before we started the podcast.
Significant other, and we talked about like being at a friend's house and telling me, oh, it's your very first time, trying a little bit here, and we had discussions about a bear because they had guns on both their front and back doors because they had a bear problem. And it's all this talk about bears. I'd never seen a bear like anywhere at this point because we were still living in California. And, I guess much later in the evening, going to bed, I get up in the middle of the night and I am screaming that I can see this bear outside the wall, which is a solid wall. Curtains are drawn. It's probably like 2:00 in the morning. There is no bear. But I saw a bear because in my subconscious that bear was there. And I wanted to see. I guess I wanted to see a bear so bad. I saw it.
I saw a bear on my deck the other day. In fact, I
saw
have
the video.
I have video proof of that. So it's real.
Yeah.
One of the things that Danny Goler was asked was if in Christianity there's an idea of angels and demons and an alternate realm that lives up there, and this is what he had to say about it. This is how he answered.
I think that with DMT, it's a little bit more surprising than people would expect, because what you see is not necessarily the kind of classical, demonic versus angelic. It's more like a very large array of species that you experience, and you can. It doesn't always happen. But if you do, then there's all kinds. And they're very clearly distinct from one another. So they're very different.
Now, he was kind of pinned down here. And I guess Sean Ryan kind of wanted to know an answer. So he says, do you believe or don't you?
The short answer is yes. But I don't think that the nature of those is as straightforward as people think.
So many ways to think about this. And I've often wondered this myself. This isn't something. The reason why I wanted to do this is because it really piqued my interest on my life experiences, on what I've seen there. And the idea is that, where does your reality come from? Does it come from our consciousness? And if so, is our consciousness from within or from without? And here's what Chase Hughes has to say about that.
Federico Fagin talks about this, and Rupert Sheldrake, that consciousness is something that comes from outside of our head and our brain acts like a filter for consciousness. So that when we do things like psychedelic, is really muting and turning down that filter on
Interesting.
consciousness.
So the idea is that consciousness is from without, and the DMT is able to filter that down so that we're more able to see what I would call the raw consciousness.
Raw consciousness, yeah, yeah.
You know, the code before it becomes reality in your brain.
Right.
And maybe that's the whole thing about the laser. Maybe that's the code. So in other words, that wall is there, but that wall is a code. And when I see it, it becomes a wall. Now, if you run your head into it, it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt, right?
You know, so there is a reality of it there, but is that a reality that you've created for yourself, or, you know, is that a reality that's there? So the idea is that, you know, if consciousness does come from without, and that goes back to your idea of the Sims that you were talking about earlier, that, you know, we don't really have a whole lot of control, I would think.
No, we wouldn't, unless you can, like, you know, like I said, DMT would probably, just think of that diamond being the hub between your consciousness and whatever's controlling you.
Your more powerful being,
Powerful being.
whatever the being
person
is.
with controlling the mouse
Yeah.
and keyboard, right?
Yeah.
Now you take the DMT, either that crystal diminishes or that's lessened, or you're actually now taking a step outside and watching yourself play the game.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you become the entity that plays the game.
Right.
I would imagine that would be a
It
possibility.
would be a possibility. Yeah.
As too.
So again, like, you know, we're not being experts. We're not discrediting any of these guys. It's a discussion to basically tap into, you know, what we understand it is, to question you guys what you understand it is, and to get feedback from you. What do you think it is? Tell us what you think it is. Tell us if you believe it, you don't believe it. If you have something in your life experiences that kind of validates these science, then share that with us.
Yeah.
If you have situations in your life that totally discredits, we want to hear that as well.
And I'd be interested to hear that, because I don't think anybody, I mean, other than they could say, "Oh, I just don't believe that," and then you'll get some of that.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely
You'll get some of that. But I think if you open your mind to what possibilities are out there, again, I'm not saying that I believe this, but because I don't know, that means that I consider it a possibility. Possibility.
And there was other discussions too that was kind of on this. We talked about multiverse and whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe we can say that for another, or we can go to the end and maybe we'll bring that up as well. But that was discussion too. And sometimes you experience certain things that do bring reality to question. And if you haven't, I congratulate you on your perfect life. But at 56 years, I can say that there's things in my life that I'm like, example, my auntie owning a monkey, right? This is a family joke that we've talked about this for years. I share this with my auntie all the time. Auntie, did you ever have a monkey? She says, I never had a monkey. And she makes a joke. Yeah, she had 8 monkeys. She just talked about her kids. But she never actually owned a monkey. And in my reality, I swear to God, I shouldn't say that, but I swear that there was a monkey in the household. I remember the diaper. I remember everything about this monkey.
There's something really touching on racist right there that I just don't want to go. I'm not going to go. Yeah, so, you know, again, like I said, we're not experts.
No.
We don't claim it. We just love having conversations about this kind of stuff. We hope you do too. And again, when it's all said and done, what do we really know? Here's Chase Hughes wrapping that up.
You're seeing something, but you're left with no answers. Like, the only thing you have coming out of that is like, what the hell did I just see?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't give you any more knowledge about anything.
So again, Larry, I don't know about you, but you know, I really want to know more about this. I want to know more about this subject. I want to know, because if it is real, I want to know why it's real.
Yeah.
If it's fake, I want to know why it's fake.
Same here. Now watching these videos, because I do watch some of these podcasts. I do watch some of these shows, and I have a certain mind where it becomes where people can use eloquent words and articulate things in a certain manner, and it just comes off completely fluid and it comes off completely real. And if you sit back and you really listen to it, you realize they probably haven't really said anything. And that's kind of what I got initially when I first watched this podcast. But at the same time, I am very open-minded, and I do believe that, you know, these type of fringe science situations and stuff are out there. They exist for a reason, because it's not just the one person coming up with one idea and usually spreading it. This is something that's worldwide, at least, and other people have experienced it or felt that they've experienced it. We just don't have what it takes to prove it at this point.
Well, to keep the joke going that we've established, I think, in other podcasts, is that when you were talking about the idea of people can be eloquent, I have that same problem with Gavin Newsom.
You know,
The
we're
man
all
can
experiencing
talk.
that.
He can talk the talk, man. Now, whether he walks the walk or not, I'm not going there. But anyway, that's my political mention for the day.
And Gavin, if you've seen my podcast, my Facebook post, you know, forgive me, but we still would like to have you on.
Yeah, I would not tell anybody no. You know, I would love to have them. Anyway, like and subscribe. Again, that's the way that we're going to make this thing grow. And, you know, I was telling Larry earlier, I know all these ones we do aren't hits, but I really like this one. I really like this conversation. I really like the idea of this right here. So like and subscribe. Let's build this up a little bit. If you're watching our little shorts that you see on some of the other pages like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and all that, you know, go to our YouTube page, like and subscribe. Go to our Facebook, go to our website, these2guys.com, and you'll see our merchandise page there right on the top. You can get merchandise, all sorts of great stuff. You can get shirts, you can get hats, you can get water bottles,
Energy drinks?
hats, energy drinks, playing cards. Just happen to have all this here. T-shirts. You like to cook, you can get an apron. All right, so that's it. I'm done with that. Peace.
Take care.
It's these two guys. These two guys. It's these two guys.